What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Mutual Connections, the show where we explore the people, ideas, and the strategies that bring business growth to life by connecting beyond the post. Today, I'm joined by somebody who embodies that connection between curiosity, strategy, and leadership, my man, John D. Ross. John is a fractional chief marketing officer, brand strategist, and growth consultant who spent his career helping companies unlock demand by putting the customer at the center of everything they do. He's led transformative marketing and brand efforts across Fortune 35, private equity, venture capital, and growth stage environments, and he's known for turning brands into trusted forces for change. As the former general manager for strategy and marketing leadership at Posigen, John helped drive customer loyalty through trust and creativity while building a referral network of over 25,000, you heard it, 25,000 advocates and fueling more than half of the company's sales volume. Today, he's also deeply involved in his community, serving on the executive committee board for the Coalition of Coastal Restoration and coaching startup founders through the Tulane Innovation Institute. Beyond the boardroom, John is a servant leader, a curiosity evangelist, and a proud New Orleanian who believes that great brands, just like great leaders, are built on authenticity, insight, and trust. And with that being said, my man John, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome to Mutual Connections.
Thanks, Chris. I hope I can match your energy. I've had a couple of espressos, and
Let's go.
I'm looking forward to having some fun.
I love it, man. I'm so excited to sit down with you today. Obviously, I've been following your journey for quite some time, so I'm probably going to get a lot more out of this one than you do, my man. But with that being said, I kind of just want to dive right into it. Is that cool with you?
Let's get after it.
Let's go, man. All right, so I jot down a couple questions. Here's what I want to dive into first is that, so I saw you've said at Posigen that your priority was showing that the board that customer success begins with hashtag trusting the brand. Gosh, speaking my language. Following that, what are like some of the specific actions or the cultural shifts that really helped you turn that belief into a measurable growth?
Yeah, I think there were sort of 3 or 4 things I learned as I came on board at Posigen back in 2022. I think the first one was that when I met with our leadership team and I talked with our employees from customer service through sales, I don't know that everyone agreed on what we stood for. Uh, that conversation I also learned in meeting with all of our partners and doing market tours in the first 60 days. And so as I thought about how are we as a mission-driven organization going to represent our goals of serving underserved communities and working families. How is it going to do that? Well, I did a lot of research, qualitative and quantitative research that said trust is what we had to look for. But that helped us build sort of the messaging and the approach as a brand-led organization that we needed to be able to go out into the marketplace, and we could apply that to all the different business units within the company. The second thing I did is scaled up a community impact team. I think that team, was originally thought of as, hey, we serve sales by generating leads from events that happen in the community, and help put that team on a path towards becoming policy advocates, upping the amount of energy and events that they had in the local markets across 13 states. And they even helped us manage sort of our public-private partnerships, like with the city of Philadelphia. So standing up that team and getting them focused on goals that were going to help us continue to build that trust with customers was key. The third thing I discovered was that we had about 1,100 unanswered posts in our online reviews across about 10 different platforms. Now, a lot of that happened as a result of Hurricane Ida and damage in Louisiana, but our customers need to know that we were listening to them and that we were acting on their feedback. But listening was first. And as we worked through that in about 6 or 7 months and addressed all of their posts, we saw our brand reputation go from what was sub 2 to around 1.5 on average to 4+ on average with our 3 main platforms that people were going to read about us before they took our appointments or after they booked business with us before we could install. So I think that was key as well. Mission driven brands that are purpose oriented need to be authentic and they need to be transparent from both how the employees represent themselves all the way to how our customers think of us. So that was the foundation of building trust. I don't think that we were ahead of our time. I think that's still true in today's chaotic society, that trust is the number one thing that you can build for your customers.
Man, I love that so much. Okay, so multiple things that I wanna pick apart. The first
Sure.
is it sounds like your very first initiative was, "Let's universalize and so that everybody knows what is our brand mission statement." And ultimately, once you have that type of clarity across the board, that's how you can really begin to focus on those different measurable components that are ultimately going to matter most. So I think that that is an absolute game changer of you coming in to be able to instill that. Like I always say, if you don't know who you are or what your brand is, how the heck do you expect anybody else to get on board with that type of service or benefit? And I want to kind of bridge it to the last part because I think that this speaks volumes about why you've been so successful and ultimately why I was so stoked to talk to you, which is you really are such a champion for the customer, like going back to the reviews and really just showing up daily to make sure that that customer journey is at the forefront as long or as well as that kind of synergy connection to what that universal brand mission is in the first place. I think that's so powerful, man. And it's something that even a lot of big logos that you and I see today, not like they just haven't quite figured that part out.
Yeah, I think you have to take ownership for the brand. If you're going to be a steward of the brand, you have to take ownership for it for big things and for small things. And so I had in the footer of my emails it says, "What have you done today to help working families save money?" Right? And
Love
so
that.
it's like that's why you get up every day. And we had a lot of conversations about that. So I think the exercise was to simplify down the mission into language, a few sentences here, an image there. Our in-house agency built out the brand and style guidelines that we could use
Yeah.
from social media all the way through when we answered the phone when someone called.
Dude, so money. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You simplify the mission, provide clarity. It doesn't have to be some completely detailed, ultra nuanced, like the more simplicity, the more synergy or magnetism that you're going to get in connecting to your core audience. So fire,
Sure.
man. Gosh,
Yeah.
we're we're
Good. I'm
one
glad
deep.
you
I'm
liked
already
it.
having a blast, John. Let's get after it, man.
Go.
All right. So obviously, I did miles of research on you. And so we'll get a little bit into the weeds. At one point, you described your approach as having a challenger mindset. And so, like, I've read the Challenger Sales book, which lives on my sales shelf, sales book, whatever. But in practice, like, it's easy to read text, but how do you bring that realism to life? Like, in practice, how do you keep that curiosity alive? And what are you doing to consistently be leading from the top?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very competitive. And so if I'm going to funnel my, competitive spirit, I want to wake up with like a chip on my shoulder each day. And having worked with brands like PepsiCo, Fortune 35 brand, but it's always going to be second to Nestle or to a Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah.
So that challenger mindset is like, how do you figure out how to do this differently? And you learn that from startups all the way through big brands. Sometimes you got the cash to put into marketing and sometimes you don't. So what are you going to come up with that's going to help you drive the business through that. And so having that mindset fuels innovation. And I don't mean innovation just in terms of big products. I mean innovation of like incrementally or what are you going to do each day and take steps that's going to help you get better at what you're doing. And having a challenger mindset keeps you committed to the business and to the people that are
Yeah.
there too. And so I find that there's in every situation, there's an opportunity for that.
Love that. Dude, I have to ask, were you an athlete growing up? Did you play any sports?
Well, I was listening to your podcast with Matt Campbell, and he was talking about playing baseball from a young age. I
Yeah.
played rugby. I played rugby starting when I was 12, but I would say my most interesting athletic story is that I was a ball boy for Duke University when Coach K first started.
Let's
And
go.
at that time, he interviewed all of us who were like 10, 8 or 9, 10 years old. and he told us that he was asking our school for reports on a quarterly basis so he would know our grades. And if our grades suffered for any reason, we were off the ball boy squad.
Dang.
And so there was some accountability of being in his office with him pointing at us across the desk and making sure that we were all on the same page to have have a standard, but now they call it a standard of excellence, but, to have an approach and commitment. And so maybe that's part of that challenger mindset. Also,
Honestly,
he's like,
it has to be. It has to. There's such an honor, and I always, obviously, you heard the story with Matt. I always draw back to sports. I was a footballer, a soccer player
right,
growing up, and there's just such a like. There are things that I learned on the field. I'm sure same with you playing rugby. That it really does create an environment in the corporate world, in the boardroom when you're leading teams. Like it's just there's such a connectivity. I had to ask because that challenger mindset is at the core of well, an athlete and just an absolute monster in the boardroom as well.
sure. No, but it's understanding what kind of teams you build or how you build teams. And I think a big part of when you don't have a lot of resources as you're trying to grow a business, you've got people that you can give great opportunities to and you can delegate to them and let them run with it. We talk a lot about this with my nonprofit and career development in terms of like people age out of the business, they move on, they get promoted at other companies. What are you going to give the young people in the business something that they can own?
Yeah.
It's gonna be stressful for them doing things for the first time and taking on that responsibility, but they actually thrive in the environment and they learn in the process. So I
No,
think
man,
they
you're
have yeah.
you're lighting them up, dude. You're giving them a reason, that inspiration, that motivation, and especially as a young gun coming into that type of environment, again with that cohesion, that universal brand mission statement. Those are the type of things like that's what keeps people around and that's what keeps them hungry to grow. So it's just such a beautiful thing.
Sure, and I think if you have I also would say part of the challenger mindset is you become obsessed with being immersed in the business, and
Yeah.
so, at Posigen, I hit all of our markets in the first 60 days that I was there for it and got to meet a lot of the employees and really made those same commitments to our community partners and the people that we work with, and so I proved to them that I wasn't you're not just calling the shots from back at headquarters, you actually have to go do the work, and that's same is true at Pepsi. If you're running the business for Yum brands globally and you're commercially responsible for it, you're going to go work in a KFC for a day, or you're going to go work at
Yeah.
the drive-through at Taco Bell and make sure that you really understand the full experience because that's the only way you can beat your competition and it's the only way you can outsmart the others.
Gosh, I love that so much. And what a good segue. Speaking of boots in the mud, actually practicing what you preach in terms of being in the field, John, one of the most tremendous accomplishments that I've seen is, dude, talk to me about building this network of over 25,000 individuals. Like, obviously, no easy feat. First question, like, how the heck did you do that? What did you learn about like human motivation and brand trust? Like, how did you organize the buy in? Like, just talk to me about any little nugget that myself or any listeners here could take away because I mean, 25,000 strong, John. Let's get after it.
Yeah, so I found out that there was a referral program that had existed and had been managed by different folks in the organization, but it wasn't like we didn't have the capabilities to really focus on it. And so I found one of our employees who had been previous virtual salesman, and he knew a lot about this program, but had never been in charge of it. So this is one of the examples of delegating to someone. And Chris Cloud told me, "Hey, I just graduated, got an associate's degree in marketing at age 40. I want to get involved in the marketing department." I was like, "Can you help me figure out this referral program?" There was about, I think maybe 5 to 7,500 people in it. They're giving 1.5 unqualified referral leads, per year. They're being financially incentivized to do so. And so what we found out was we got to start this regular cadence with them to let them know of what the opportunity is. Because as much as they were trying to save money through solar energy and residential solar energy, they need to be able to earn money too, because everybody's only got so many dollars at the end of the month.
Yeah,
So if we could prove to them that they could win with this and tie it back to our frontline sales force, then it's a win-win. Win-win-win for everybody, right? It's going to win for the
honestly.
customer, it's going to win for the salesperson, it's going to win for the business. And so again, going back to consumer insights, looked at it. It was the families who had been customers for 5 to 10 years, they are either gonna be our biggest promoters or they're gonna be our biggest detractors, and so because they've seen the savings in time for the business. So, we increased the cadence of communication for them, we improved the unit economics that we could incentivize them more. The incentives for the customers for a referral program and for promotions, you would think that customers would jump at that. It motivated the sales force, to close in the last week of the month, and certainly at the end of the quarter, gave them another reason to reach out to the customers. But if we gave these customers this option, and if we could figure out that we could pay and compensate them within 48 hours of when they hit those triggers across the customer journey, 5 to 10 more referrals would come right back in right away.
Yeah,
So we went from 1.5 a year to about 3.5 referrals per registered advocate per year. If we could get to 5, the whole thing would have hockey sticked. And that's
just
what would
lights out.
drive down the overall customer acquisition. So what that meant was recruit more people into the referral programs, find more referral programs that could work for the business, and then at the same time, make sure that we could get our partners in finance to understand what we were driving for the business and show the attribution to it all along the path. What we hadn't learned how to do in year 3 was to teach and onboarding new sales hires to get them to focus on their immediate community. There's a long held story in like home services that your next best 5 referrals are 5 houses to the left, 5 houses to the right, 5 houses up, 5 houses down because they've
I
seen the
love
work
it.
on your home. So we encourage anybody in their onboarding and training for sales to go out into their own community, whether they were Latino communities, Asian communities, if there were people who lived along the beach, it didn't matter. But whatever your definition of community was, is where you were going to get those referrals from. And the most successful, highest earning salespeople that we had depended on referrals only. And they made it into a game for themselves and their community. And those advocates became recruiters for us. So that's how we scaled it from, about 5,000 advocates to about 25,000 advocates and got more resources that could work around it and really plug that team together with our call center to get more qualified leads.
That's so wild, man. Look, I'll be honest with you. So, only within the last 3 years, because I received advice similar to this, did I really start leaning into the referral game. And I see so many big logos and major companies that I don't think that people are exercising the referral channel nearly enough. Because, and I always say this, you get a positive review on like your Google or your Yelp page or on like a LinkedIn or a Facebook, whatever it is, those positive reviews are a real currency, but you have to turn it into a currency. And there is no better validation than hearing directly from a customer who's like, yo, I am getting exactly what I want and need and more from this service. Like that type of support in that referral market, it just is tremendous, man. So I love that you kind of zeroed in on that focus because I'm sure it just absolutely flipped sales upside down. And it probably made sales easier as well. I mean, come on.
Sure. Well, I think about, and I'm not blowing smoke up your butt about it, but I think about in the book, you talk about people being more self aware and finding their own authentic voice, right? And how they sell. And when you're selling through a referral based approach, you're going to be much more comfortable and it's going to feel a lot more natural to
Yeah.
you than cold calling people who have no idea who you are, that you drove from an hour away to meet with them. These are heavy labor, one call close, type opportunities.
Yeah.
That referral game is just what it just gets exciting. And we took that same template and applied it to customer service and other places that we could incentivize people to bring us more business.
No, man, you're spot on. You're spot on. And again, like it's just that avenue of additional revenue and building new sales is just not utilized nearly enough. So, for all you guys listening, if you don't have a referral program, if you're not creating incentives for those referring parties, create an entire mechanism so that you could really turn that machine inside out. Because I promise you, John will tell you, I could tell you, it really does flip the script on how you're able to create expansive sales, and you gotta leverage those positive comments, man. It's the name of the game. So,
Still building trust. Still building
yeah.
trust.
No, exactly. Exactly. So, let's dig in a little deeper into trust. And I want to talk about trust inside the skeleton of marketing's seat at the table, if you will. I saw somewhere you said that marketing is often misunderstood as expendable, but you see it to be the only unifying force that can drive company growth. So what kind of changes do you think that an organization needs to make to its marketing department or its strategy to make sure that it's operating in the right direction? Like, look, I'm a sales guy, and the funny kind of bias between marketing and sales is that, you know, we're kind of always not getting along the best. You know what I mean? Like my MQLs, my SQLs, are you driving new warm leads to me? So like, what can I do to my marketing team? What can others do to like really synergize and get them headed in that right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think the role as a marketing leader has never been under more pressure to justify how expensive every dollar is that goes into growing a business. And so if you think about what if you need as a marketing leader when you enter a business, you need to be able to understand what has to change inside the organization strategically to grow. And then a lot of that is about breaking down silos. And so when you have such rapid growth with tech companies, with businesses that have been received their private equity and venture capital money, when you're growing that fast, everybody has their head down. And when they have their head down, they're just focused on their job, but there's not anyone who's driving that alignment or making those connections between those different parts of the organization. I already gave you numerous examples of what happened across sales, customer service, our operations department, all in terms of building that referral program. So the marketing leader has to take it on themselves and work through the executive team and the CEO who's focused on that North Star of growth and all the different pieces or levers that you can pull to contribute to that. And those should be measurable. And if they're not measurable yet, then you're going to have to find a solution for it. So I think my experience as a chief of staff at PepsiCo and North American Beverages was all about alignment from a CMO perspective. And our
Yeah.
CMOs were working heavily with our system and heavily with the bottlers to get everybody on board and focused in the right direction. And I thought it was sort of magic that I was learning when I was in that role. But I've gone back and listened to Indra Nui and the masterclass platform, and it was part of the strategy all along to be
Yeah.
marketing or brand led and get everybody rallied behind the growth potential for the business.
Let me ask, man, because you've been in the marketing game for quite some time. And with all this new fancy technology, you got like your GBTs, you got people making these AI videos now that through Sora, and some of that stuff is like, could have fooled me, man. Like, talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of the difference of marketing 15 years ago and the marketing environment that we're living in today.
Yeah, I mean, my rise and role in marketing came through digital and interactive media. And so I was obsessed with consumer behavior. And if you can understand more consumer behavior through whatever avenues that you have, but you still have to have the foundations of a brand, you still have to have consumer insights around the moments that matter for buying decisions. You have to know what you stand for and you have to feel confident about it. And if you don't go through that exercise, no matter what size business you are, it puts you at great risk in the
Yeah.
future. Because when you do make mistakes or you are off track or you're not delivering for the business, you've got to make some tough decisions. And if you don't have those foundations in place or know where to go to get those answers, I think it goes back to the fundamentals, right? And just being
Yeah.
drilled on the fundamentals. I think in terms of the talking about all the changes in technology and creative, I think there's onus on the marketing leader to upskill the teams to understand how to use those tools. I'm quite obsessed with creativity, the role of artificial intelligence and LLMs, and I've built GPTs into different personas that I use for things. And so if that gives me more time, or if I can get those tools to challenge me and ask me questions and not give me answers, but ask me questions how to problem solve or develop creative, then I think I'm using it in the right way. I get confused when I see some of the videos that are out there too. Is this real or is it not?
Right.
But I can tell you even here in New Orleans, there's a very strong reaction negatively against anybody that produces materials that are AI generated.
Yeah. Just
For
no
for
human
bands or
intervention.
events or whatever, people are just gonna take them down because they know that they're that part of it. So we all have to adapt and evolve, but AI is not going to replace good creative and strategic thinking.
Nah, I love it so much. I want to touch on a couple things that you mentioned because
Sure.
I think that they really highlight, honestly, like who you are as a person and why you've been on such a tremendous trajectory of growth. Is that one, you mentioned utilizing a GBT or a large or small language model more as like a thought leader, like ask me questions, give me the curiosity kind of realm, and don't just produce for me. And so I think that that's so strong. But I want to go back to the very first thing that you said. And it's kind of the general theme off of the first question I asked is you're like, look, we need to create a clear and simple mission statement, universal across the board. And so going back to marketing, I think that's why we see so much rubbish in terms of digital advertisements and these taglines that aren't really aligned with what the mission is altogether, and it's because they're missing that absolute concrete foundation. Like, dude, we have more fun tools at our fingertips than we have ever had before, and it's easy to get lost in the sauce if you don't have that type of clarity with what that foundation looks like. So I think that that's monster, that's really your first objective, your first initiative when you're coming in and trying to build this empire. Is like, hey team, let's all get on the same page, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where you find out you're needed. This is as soon as you have the ability to communicate and you have the ability to understand consumer behaviors, the other department's going to come to you and ask for help, right? And whether it was scripting and customer reviews and what we focused on, which we didn't even realize that in the first 3 months there. But I also would say the reliance on first party data. Are you generating first party data for your business? Is an absolute mandatory because in that data are stories behind the numbers. And if you can find the right stories behind those numbers, then you can measure and convince the people within the organization where the money should be
No,
invested
seriously.
and where the capabilities are. But if you don't have that first party data and you're just relying on third party data and sort of obscure trends and things like that, you don't really know where you sit with your customers. And I think the referral example earlier, I think about a lot of the data that we use mapping at PepsiCo, 300 million households in the US, and we knew flavor preferences and where people could spend their time. So we knew how to reach out to them with the right offers that could get us volume and lift in the business, and we could offer that to our commercial partners too in a way that they didn't understand yet.
Yeah.
And so those were the early days of what we just called the algorithm before there were distinct LLM tools that we could identify.
Yeah, dude, that consumer data has to be mandatory. And it goes back to you being boots on the ground in the field, practicing what you preach, hearing those real stories, because it's those real stories, especially in that marketing seat at the table we were talking about. That's
Sure.
what puts your customers feet in those boots, and they like people react to that emotional style storytelling. So to be able to take and extract from real live consumer data the actual customer journey, I mean, those are the two puzzle pieces that you're trying to put together, and that's really what speaks to people. So, man,
Yeah,
I'm all
it's
about it.
fun. I mean, that's the fun part, right? I mean, and I think personalization, the expectations around personalization. I mean, you having daughters, like having kids, like you don't expect to get stuff that for you don't want to be prospected for a pet that you don't have or
Yeah.
something that's not in your life. And so people demand and expect, true personalization in all the communications and what they have as well. People feel both ways about it, but I think at this point, given the amount of content that's being pushed out there, I do think the brands are getting too loud and are pushing too hard to give you as more and more messaging all the time. And that's why the authenticity or the ability to be unique and be first to market and use different features and ways to reach people is really what motivates a team and gets them performing. And that puts the data right into a performance marketing model.
Yeah. God, I'm dude, hit the nail on the head again because we're seeing a lot of marketing initiatives coming from the same company, and it's just kind of confusing the room. Going back to simplicity, man. Simplicity, core messaging, use your consumer behavioral data and like come on, man, marketing we're storytellers. So let's tell some stories. So I love it. let's jump into the insights framework that I've heard you speak
Sure.
about a little bit. You've talked about unlocking an insights framework instead of relying on traditional group focus groups. What does that look like? How can companies use it to build more of a customer centered growth strategy? I feel like that's kind of a great segue off of how do I take action using consumer behavioral data to be able to develop a strategic framework for the direction I want to head. Talk to me about unlocking the insights framework.
Sure. I mean, I think there's eternal motivations or eternal truths that exist. I use a framework from the Paragraph Project that Dan Carlton developed called the Eight Eternal Truths. And that tells you everything you need to know about people and what motivates them to make buying decisions. What happens with marketers is that we often hold a mirror up to ourselves and we want to validate, our theories or hypothesis for a product or a brand. So I'm gonna go back to long ago in my career working in a digital shopper marketing agency, and the client, Mars Pet Care, said, we're gonna do these focus groups. And at focus groups, the people aren't supposed to know who you are. You're sitting on the other side of the mirror, but they're trying to please you because they're trying to figure out who you are. So this one junior marketer who was just phenomenal. I just remember him saying, okay, we're not asking any questions. We're going to put all the products, all the pet products out on a table. We're going to tell them they can go in, they can pick any one they want. And then when they walk out the door on the other side of the room, we're going to ask them why they picked that particular product. So we had both competitors and our new all natural products on the table. And so, as opposed to them trying to figure out what we wanted them to do or to lead them through the conversation, we just said, "Hey, you get some free pet food. Go in and pick something, and then tell
Yeah.
us why you bought it." And that could be packaging related, it could be value related, it could be ingredient based, which is what we found out in the exercise. And so, it was a no BS way to learn what people really give us for free. Did I lose you?
Yeah. Dude, so money. And to your point is look, like I love the psychology of sales. And I feel like there's a lot obviously
Sure.
synergies behind those behavioral studies, marketing and sales. You got your right brain people who may be a little bit more artistic, emotional, into the storytelling. You got your left brain people that are more analytical, something like, hey, this is all organic products. This is a health feature of a traditional product driven by analytics and analysis. So I'm sure running those type of focus groups, a give you that insight into like, was it the fancy color on the packaging that sold the deal here? Or was it that I mentioned that this is a 100% organic product? There's none of the, unpronounceable names or ingredients. And so again, like that's that consumer behavioral data that really helps you drive the ship, develop your strategy. And, I need to check out the insights framework because I think it goes toe to toe with even what I'm doing every single day talking to people.
I mean, I think about we had a great conversation when I first joined my last business about. I said, "What do you think of people's like motive? What do you think they're thinking about when they wake up in the morning?" And we were thinking, "Oh, they're thinking about what am I going to buy today?" Or they were thinking, "Oh, could I save money with solar or that part of it?" And I was like, they are thinking about two things when they wake up in the day. How's the economy and how's my job status? Like, period. Like, that's how I'm going to
That's
take care
it.
of my family. Like, that's what they care about. So, meeting the customer or the buyer decision maker where they are at that time is the key, I believe, in marketing. I think it's the key in performance, and I think it's true in sales too. You're not going to give them a list of attributes and the reasons to believe and all that sort of stuff if you're not talking to them, if you don't meet them where they are, and make sure that you're listening. And that goes back to that trust principle as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you, who do you from like the massive logos, like one of my favorite marketing aspect companies right now is Red Bull because Red Bull is a beverage, right? But in everything that they're producing from a marketing standpoint, literally has nothing to do with drinking an energy drink. It's more like, you know, Red Bull gives you wings, take your wings to do the impossible. They're sponsoring all these cool, like extreme sports things. So, like, who do you think right now in that market game is really just knocking it out of the park?
And I think about two types of companies. I think about companies that offer utility, right? And so I think about Google Maps or Waze. Like, I can't
Mm.
function without those, without those tools. I do every once in a while if I'm going on a long road trip, I do like to switch ways into Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice or, something like
There we
that
go.
because then it's entertaining you and keeping you awake through the process. But I think also that I like brands that have a sense of humor and that are self-deprecating too. So I think Liquid Death is one of the ones that really I find
Yes.
really entertaining.
They have a killer marketing strategy. You're so right.
Exactly, and I see it in the music clubs in New Orleans when people are drinking Liquid Death and someone's like, "Oh, what is that?" And they think it's a beer, and it's
Yeah.
not. But they just, they don't give an F. Like they just like play it as it is. I'd be interested to see what their market cap is and how much they can grow. But you're seeing the innovation in their products, and you're seeing them have a lot of fun. So when you say who I think is doing well, if I see Liquid Death social media that they're offering some limited time product or some limited time swag or something like that, I immediately pay attention, which means I'm thinking about them,
Yeah.
during
Dude, I wasn't even thinking Liquid Death has a fire strategy, and they do. They look like beer cans, man. I mean,
and they
they're
have
they're
fun
just
doing it,
they
right?
lean
They're
into
having
it
fun
so
doing it.
hard.
Yep, yep, they sure are.
So sweet. All right. You often refer to yourself as a servant leader, and I love that so much. Let's talk about servant leadership in its actual practice. Um, how do you practice servant leadership day to day, especially when you are guiding these like high performing marketing teams and executives? Like, and that's such a what's the word? Oxymoron, if you will,
Right.
servant leadership, which I love. Love a good pun. Talk to me about how you bring that into your day to day through practice.
Yeah, so I think I would think of a couple things. As I told you before last time we talked, I think there's got to be a better phrase than servant leadership to describe the practice of listening to others. And by listening, you're not always asking for something, but you're sort of taking it in and showing respect to people
Yeah.
by asking them how you can help them. Because as you move up through an organization, as you develop through your career, you've got to save your energy for thinking ahead for the business and inspiring the people. You can't be in the weeds all the time for it. And so, as a servant leader, you're open to anyone, you'll meet with anyone anytime, you have an open door policy for anyone in the organization. And then you'll know as people bring you ideas, as you're able to delegate, as people raise their hand to help drive the business, that you're winning and you're being successful. And I've always said, if you're running the team that everybody else wants to be on, then you know that you're succeeding because your business is succeeding, people are getting paid, and they're continuing to grow. So I think
Yeah.
those are the basics. I also think so many of the teams that I've worked with have done Gallup strength training. We've done the cultural index, we've done all those things beyond sort of Myers Briggs, and that's helped us become more self aware as leaders and more self aware as team members. And I think that's a big part of servant leadership too, that you can pass down to others. When you do, when you do hit those silos, when you've been through reductions in the business, and we've all often put in a start, stop, continue exercise and let people put it on the table and say, this is what I know I can impact in the business. So I want to do more of that. I want to continue doing this, or we as a team need to start doing this, or we need to stop doing this. And that's not going to be
Yeah.
a popular answer to anybody else in the business, but it gives them reassurance that they've been able to express themselves in a safe and private environment, and that we can make decisions as leaders to go forward. So for me, I think those are the principles that work and really build resilience within their teams to be able to handle
Yeah.
any of the headwinds or stressors that are going to come in the business.
Man, I'm so aligned to that. I always tell this story. I'll give you the 2 seconds. So I used to coach women's college soccer at
Hmm.
CSUN in Southern California. My first week, man, John, they hated me because I came in and I was like pretending to be this English Premier League professional coach and like my way or the highway. Like, you know the shtick. Come on.
Right.
And dude, they hated me. So I kind of had like a meeting of the minds with everybody and really just kind of leaned into that servant leadership. Like I
Hmm.
started leading with curiosity. I started asking a lot more questions about what they thought versus what my idea was and what I saw. And first of all, that dictated how I'm a leader today. But what I saw is that by me being curious, it empowered them. It empowered them to have
Sure.
an opinion, and a lot of the times, like, as a coach, I'm on the sideline watching, right? But I don't know what the grass feels like under my boots. I don't see that divot on the left side of the field, and that's why they keep cutting to center. And so getting that type of feedback and being curious, not pretending to be the smartest person in the room, it really did empower them. And shoot, dude, 9 times out of 10, they had a way better idea than what I was bringing to the table. And so I try to keep that same practice in what I'm doing today.
Sure. I think that's the motivation when you meet anybody who's an expert at something, right? And so when you meet somebody who's really good at what they do, you want to listen and learn of how they got there, what their thought process is, just like the kind of conversations that you've been having on the podcast. And it helps others too. And it's genuine. Like you're genuinely interested and to hear and listen to others.
Yeah. And it does, man. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they're a part of something and having that open dialogue. Like, dude, that's where the magic is 100%. It really is. Let's pivot, man. Let's
Okay,
pivot
let's
because
go.
I mentioned earlier, you are a man of New Orleans. First of all, have you always been out in NOLA? Has that been kind of home base the whole time?
I moved here after college and had a couple different stages to my career working at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, working in hospitality, and then also working with Cox Interactive Media at the
Okay.
beginning of the rise of digital. And then I left for a number of years, but I'd spent a lot of time here 4 or 5 times a year and always wanted to be able to move back. And so I consider it to be my home.
I love
Absolutely.
that. When my wife and I get a sneaky trip away where grandma watches the kids, New Orleans is one of the top 3 every time we get out of there. I'm in Texas, so it's a quick plane flight over, but dude, the architecture, the history, all of the old churches, we're big spooky people, so like going on the ghost tours, like come on, dude. New Orleans, hands down one of my favorite cities in America. Talk to me about your life, your experience on the mean streets of NOLA. There's obviously the Buddhist practice as well. All of that seems to anchor you into the authenticity and the ritual that you're bringing to life in your personal and your professional life. Like, how do some of those influences of your current environment and your experience in New Orleans, has that shaped does it shape your leadership style? Like, are you able to bring some of that into the boardroom with you?
Yeah, I think absolutely. After spending a lot of time in the Northeast and in the New York market, coming out of, I don't know, whatever, we came out of COVID, we're in the middle of COVID, and being able to choose where I wanted to live was a real luxury for me. And so I chose to come back here because I wanted to live in a more relationship based culture. And I think that this city is very, in some ways, is very European in that way. It's very Northern Caribbean in that
Yeah.
way, which means we got all the best food. We grow vegetables and fruit year round. But I think that there's a spiritual element to the city that's based around rituals. And
Yeah.
so, not just religious, but all the other events. There was a joke the other day. It said, if you haven't worn a costume in 3 weeks in New Orleans and you need to find something to do and get dressed up for. So I think the real sense of community of what I've been welcomed back into in my neighborhood that I live in, how people take care of each other and give back comes through all the lessons that they've learned, all the way back to when the Germans, Spanish, and then French came and established the city. So
Yeah.
the old worldness of it is important. But I got some great advice from one of my first bosses here, Tim Williamson, who runs the New Society and helped found the Idea Village, really the entrepreneurship ecosystem here. And he always says, who's in your band? Like, who do you have in your band in your life, right? And I can count everybody from the lady at the dry cleaners who reads me a Bible passage when I pick up my clothes on Tuesday
Let's go.
mornings, to the musicians that I've been following and spending time with for 30 years, to the business leaders and the nonprofit leaders that I spend time with. I think the people that I get to meet through the Tulane Innovation Institute, through the Freeman School of Business, like I got some diversity in my band. I got all kinds of different talents and different skills here too. And so that was what I was seeking for a community to be in. And then
Love that.
great space to be outside, great weather most of the year, And so if there's any place that I want to be and meditate at sunrise in the live oak trees and listen to the day sort of come alive, then this is the right place for me to be. And this is the
Dude,
right place for me to go
100.
out. This is the right place for me to go out and stick up for and have impact, right? And
Yeah,
or raise my hand and say, I want to help the people of this city. I want to be a part of their successes. Their sports teams aren't as successful as I would like, but that will come, every 10 or
it's
15
happening.
years.
Saints, we still believe in you, baby. We're only a few years off of finding our next Drew Brees. All right, come on, let's go. Dude, have you done any of the spooky ghost tours?
I've been on a couple of them, but I feel like there's probably ghosts all over the city and in these old houses
They're wild, man.
that we live in. So I love the cemeteries. There's a great cemetery right by my house, one of the Lafayette cemeteries, and this blues singer who lived in my neighborhood, Walter Wolfman Washington, is interred there. And so when I finish my runs, I can go walk through the cemetery and say hello to Walter
That's
and
awesome.
some of the other characters that are in there. So I do think it's interesting how they celebrate life and death here. We put the fun in funeral, as they say.
Oh, dude, you absolutely put the fun. Speaking of cemeteries, you guys, they're called crypts, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, for those of you guys listening, we're talking about, and maybe John, correct me if, is it because of the flooding? Is it because of the weather? Like, there's,
The water table is very, you can't bury people because
yeah,
there's the
they're
water
like these
tables.
above ground. Like, dude, I did one cemetery tour, and I think Nicolas Cage just has a crypt already there, like it's ready for him. It's pre-built. He knows where his landing spot is going to be. These things are massive, bro.
I'll offer this to the people who may not have tuned out yet after the cemetery talk. I'll offer to them, anybody can email me or message me anytime, and I have a list of all my favorite things to do in New Orleans: neighborhoods, restaurants, museums, things to do with your family, certain times a year to be here. And so I'll offer that out to anybody for free that contacts me, and I'll share with you. And there'll be a third of the things in there you won't have never heard of or wouldn't even know about.
That's the magic. I'm
Happy
gonna
to
be
do that.
first on that email list. You shouldn't have
All
said
right,
that.
Chris.
And I might hit you multiple times. Say, John, I burned through the first 10. What else you got for me?
Well, I'll send you the list, and the list you can have more fun on the list than you would hanging out with me. So
Let's
that's my
go.
guarantee.
Let's go. I'm gonna track you down. Next time I'm in NOLA, I'm tracking you down regardless. So we'll get into some shenanigans.
Right.
Look, man, you are a busy professional. I want to respect the integrity of your time. We're coming up on the hour mark. Let me hit you with one last question. And this is something I was most curious about as well. And that is your Substack series, The Curious Five. So, like, what I know of it is Curious Five introduces thinkers who've overcome obstacles across industries. And so, from your side, what common traits have you noticed amongst these leaders? What are the trends? How does that information inform you of your own approach and how you're tying it into marketing and growth? Like, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Curious Five?
Yeah. I mean, the inspiration for it was to focus on those concepts around trust, presence, and creativity in business. But I wanted to talk to people who are at different stages of their career and ask them the same set of questions about what affects their leadership style, ask them questions about how they're incorporating AI, ask them about things that may have changed their mind during their career or things that they've learned, no matter when it is, that's sort of shifted their leadership style, and who do they point to as mentors for it. And so I'm publishing those about every other week. May do it more often, but I've got folks from all over the country and certainly from here in New Orleans too that I'm starting to push out there. And so it becomes a great conversation. It's hard to stay on task because we want to go in a lot of different directions. But as I get questions, as I work with students at different business schools and universities from a coaching standpoint, I think working with startups and founders for it. And then in addition to the work that I've done with large Fortune 35 companies and talking with people in their different careers, I think it's important to give back servant leadership principle, introduce where they find resilience and to stay strong and develop their career. But I think it all goes back to tie it all together. The themes go back to self-awareness, which you talk about in corporate casual, and like what's their distinct style and what do they really want out of their career in life, right? Because we've all had our biggest or largest or highest profile type roles.
Yeah.
Where are they now in their career, and what taught them that? So self-awareness is a big one. Rest, like where do you go to rest and recharge, is always an interesting question.
Terrible at that
to be
part,
able to
I'll
ask.
tell
I'm
you.
getting better. I'm getting better at it. That's why I moved back to New Orleans from New York. And then I think who their mentors are and where they seek advice from, I think are some of the common threads that people get out of them. So I've got folks from the top agency world to local musicians. I've got some journalists and TV personalities, TV anchors that are going to come in that we're going to do some pieces on. And so it's a fun conversation to have and really connects with people in a meaningful way.
Dude, I don't have nearly the accolades as you, John, but I feel like I'm growing up to become you and exactly what you stand for and what you're look like, bro. The curiosity leading with being genuine, remaining authentic, like really, and to use that word, servant leadership, which to be fair, I know we're looking for a better name. I quite love that name.
Mhm.
And like, I just feel like everything that you're standing for is so rooted in good intentions and support and benefit of factory for growth, not only for yourself, but like I learn from seeing other people's stories and, dare say if
Sure.
they learn something from me along the way, I learn just from that. And sometimes it'd be like, wait, that resonated with that. What what did I say? That may have been pretty good. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm
Right.
I'm just such a big fan of everything that you're doing, man. Yeah, dude, I love it. Curious
Well, I get
5,
it.
everyone.
Yeah, come check it out on Substack. It's easy to find. Well, I appreciate you, Chris, and I always get energy out of our conversations together. And oftentimes when I run in the park, I can put your podcast on, whether you're talking, like I said, Matt Campbell, or whether you're talking to Nikki, to these other personalities. It's got a lot of energy too. And I think that's something that everybody deserves to earn and be aware of.
I love it, man. Well, Mr. John D. Ross, you heard it here first. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. My name is Chris Walcher. This is Mutual Connections. My boy John, this is not going to be our last rodeo. In fact, we are just getting started. I know you're a busy man, so I'll cut you loose. But I appreciate you hanging out with me today, brother. I really do.
Thank you so much, Chris. A time well spent.
Yes, sir. All right, big man. I'll catch you outside of the recording space, and I look forward to our next collaboration.
All right. Take care.
All right. Cheers.